So today I want to touch on anxiety and depression and things I've gone through in my life, but mostly this last 5 years, which has contributed to me losing my confidence, self-esteem, my get up and go, my ability to actually exercise, and it's also affected, I suppose, my relationships with people as well and my work. So we'll start. Story time. 2020, during the pandemic, I used to work, well, I'll say for the council. It was a housing association, a really large one based in the northeast of England. And it was really, really good money, especially when you put in the overtime and you did the call out. You could earn in excess of 50 grand a year, but you were doing a lot of call out and you were probably spending a lot more time at work than you were with your family. And I was guilty of being very, very greedy, and I would just say yes to any overtime, yes to any call out. And, people who didn't want to do call out, they'd ring me and I'd go, yeah, I'll do that for you, I'll do that for you. And that was in 2019 going into 2020. Now, we all know what happened in 2020 with the pandemic. And we were reduced down to a skeleton team, really, because we had a lot of team members who were medically vulnerable or they were getting on a little bit, so they were kind of excused from coming to work. So our team of people pretty much halved, yet the workload was the same. So you were still going out doing the same work that you would normally do during the day, but you would be picking up extra jobs, and then you still had call out and you still had overtime to do as well. So this was basically March through to May. Now, I started off great, big paychecks at the end of the month, loving life. But about the end of April, I started to feel tired and burnt out. And then there was the pressures of the pandemic as well. On the news, there was all these scare stories about you're going to die, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. Work didn't have any PPE, so to speak, at the beginning. So you were literally going into people's homes and these people had COVID and you had to go in the homes and fix the boilers. Now, there was things in place where, people were told to stay in other rooms and things like that, but as well as I know, you can catch a cold from just touching a surface like that and rubbing your nose. It was that easy. So leading up to May the 19th, 2020, I was feeling really tired. Brain fog was kicking off, and I'd never experienced brain fog before. And I was feeling dizzy and stuff, but I knew I had a week off coming. So I thought, right, get this week out the way with, and it got to that date, and I finished work. And I came home and I just felt like garbage. I asked the missus, I said, why don't we just get a takeaway tonight? We'll watch a film and we'll chill out. So we got a takeaway delivered about 5:30. And I ordered a chicken kebab, some doner meat, and I think pizzas and stuff like that, and a big bottle of Coke. Now, I don't know what happened that night, but I ate my chicken kebab and the doner meat looked suspect. It really did look suspect. But I felt so crappy in myself that I just wanted to feel better. And I think people turn to food to feel better. And that's exactly what I did. And that's what I was doing actually a lot. So I ate all the chicken kebab, all the chips. I had a slice of cheesy garlic bread. And then this suspect looking doner, which Mrs. Murphy said she's not going to touch. My kids went, I'm not going to touch that. I decided, I'm going to wolf some of that down. So I did. And it tasted a bit funny, but I ate it. We cleared up, we stuck a movie on, and I was drinking the pop and stuff like that, the Coca-Cola. It came in a 2-litre bottle. And I'm not going to lie, I probably drank about a litre of Coke. Full fat Coke as well. And we were watching the movie and my heart just started. pounding. And we weren't doing anything. The movie wasn't exciting. We literally just sat watching it. And it started pounding. Now, at the time, I used to have Apple Watches, and I had an Apple Watch, and I took it off after I finished work, but I put it back on, and my heart rate was at 186 beats a minute. Now, that was a bit like, whoa, what the hell's going on here? But then I started to sweat profusely, and I started to shake. Like my adrenaline was kicking in. Very weird. I thought, oh, this will pass. But it didn't. So we rang 111, who actually sent an ambulance out. And because it was COVID, and in the Northeast it was really quiet in May 2020, the ambulance was here within probably about 5 minutes. He came in, the guy, the paramedic, and the girl came in. He strapped me up to all these machines and stuff, and took a little pinprick of blood or whatever. And he looked at his partner and he said, no, mate, I'm gonna have to get you to hospital. I was like, no, I'm all right. And he's like, no, I'm gonna have to get you to hospital. Now, this is the first time I'd ever been to hospital in an ambulance. So they took me out to the ambulance. I got in, and I was blue lighted through to our nearest hospital. I was taken straight into resus. Nobody was talking to me, telling me what was going on. My heart is now spiking at 210 to 215 beats a minute in the ambulance. Nobody was telling me what was going on. When I was put into resus, the staff that were in that resus area were all eating pizza. One of them was taking a Snapchat video, I expect, TikTok, whatever, I don't know what was out then. And nobody would come over and talk to me. One nurse did come over, stuck a swab right up my nose, pulled it out, and took off. And I was left in limbo. Somebody else came over and put a drip on me, and the heart monitor thing, and wouldn't tell me what was going on. And because I'd never had a medical emergency or a medical problem before, I didn't know what questions to ask either. I was like totally like, whoa, like overwhelmed, so to speak. And anyway, they did a shift change, and when the shift change happened, a doctor came over to me. I think he was from Bangladesh, really small guy, older guy, probably about 60. He came over and he grabbed my hand. He said, "Don't worry, sir, I'm going to look after you." And I started to feel a little bit better, but it was still beating, still going nuts. Now, this is probably 45 minutes to an hour after it first happened. They eventually gave me some beta blockers, which brought my heart rate down. And all I wanted to do was wee. That's all I wanted to do. I couldn't like hold it in. It was just, I needed to wee all the time. And they made me go to the toilet, pushing my little dinghy to go for a wee. On my own as well. Not even chaperoned. Then, obviously the Bangladeshi doctor, he said he wanted to keep me in. He wanted to run further tests. But another, I can imagine a trauma surgeon, nurse, whatever. She came in anyway, and she said, "No, he's to go home." But the Bangladeshi doctor said, "No, he's staying in." And they had a bit of an argument, and it was in earshot of me, so I could hear it, and I was like, "What?" And I was a bit like, "Oh God, what's going on?" Then she came over and said, "Have you taken any drugs? Are you a drug user?" That kind of thing. "Do you take intravenous drugs?" And I was like, whoa, what the hell? I said, "No, I was sat on my couch watching a film." They did keep me in that night, and then the next morning they came around with like a portable kind of heart scanner, and they scanned around my chest and my heart, and they said everything's fine. And they sent me home. And when they sent me home, I just felt really like hungover. It was weird. It was proper weird. I just felt hungover and I just wanted my bed. But then I started being sick, and I didn't just spew up. It was coming out the other end as well, and it stunk. It really stunk. And this was all day. And I was trying to drink, and every time I drank, I just spewed up. Even little sips of water, I was just being sick. And I was in bed all day. Mrs. Murphy kept on coming and checking me, obviously, and then when she did come to bed, a bit later on that night, probably about 8, 9 o'clock, I felt a little bit safer, so I went to sleep. But at 1 o'clock in the morning, my heart rate was going through the roof, and it literally woke me up. And there we were again, 999 this time, ambulance, blue lighted through to Darlington. But this time they didn't take me to resus, I just went to the A&E waiting area. But again, it was quiet, so I was seen pretty quickly. They did a heart thing where they strap you up, took bloods, said you're not having a heart attack according to the bloods. Your heart rhythm's fine, it's just fast. We're going to send you home. But I was still vomiting and I was still coming out the other end as well. And it stunk, and I was telling them this. I said, something not right. So they sent me home. This kept on happening over the next few days, but I tried to ignore it. I didn't ring the ambulance or anything like that. But about 3 days later, I did actually say to Amy, I said, you're going to have to take me back through to A&E, something's not right. Took me back through to A&E. Obviously, Amy couldn't come in with me. She had to wait outside in the car park in the car. I went into the waiting area, blood's taken again, heart monitor again. Everything was fine, apparently. And they sent me home again, but I'm still being sick. Now, I tried to get in with the doctors. I tried to get in to see the doctor because of this sickness and diarrhea. Like I say, it was really bad. It was like everything I put in my mouth just came out. And the smell was horrific. Like, it was horrific. The doctors wouldn't see me. They said, oh, just treat for sickness and diarrhea, plenty of fluids, plenty of electrolytes if you've got them, da-di-da-di-da. And, you know, about another 3 or 4 days went past. So this is over a week now where I'm really poorly and my heart's going divvy, like absolutely divvy. And when it goes divvy, I'm sweating, I'm shaking, disorientated, I'm going funny. Eventually, they wouldn't see me at the doctor's, so I rang the British Medical Council and I was pleading with them. I said, you need to get them to see me, you need to get them to see me. Now, during COVID, they stopped all complaints. So what they did for me, this woman on the phone, she was lovely. She rang my surgery, my doctor's surgery, and they rang me within a few minutes and they said, you need to come in and have a chat with us. When I went into the doctor's surgery, you could tell he was shocked. He was absolutely shocked. And like, honestly, he looked like, oh God, I should have seen this guy. They took stool samples and stuff like that, and they suspected Helicobacter pylori, but they didn't know for a few days for the test results to come back. So they sent me home again, told me to drink electrolytes again. And by this time, I felt like my stomach was settling down a bit, but my heart wasn't. I was able to drink a little bit of water, a tiny bit of soup, and a little bit of applesauce, and a little bit of rice. It was called the Bram diet or something like that. So it's like, I think it was bananas, rice, apples, or bread, rice, apples, that kind of thing. A few days later, I get a phone call. You've tested positive for Helicobacter pylori, and then this other thing as well related to food poisoning. We're going to put you on 3 antibiotics twice a day, as well as omeprazole twice a day. You need to take these for, I think it was for 14 days. So I did. Now, I'm meant to be back at work as well at this time, so I'm worried about work. I ring me boss and I'm like literally saying to him, I know it's COVID and I know there's no people in, but I can't come into work. I'm really, really poorly. And he was actually pretty cool at this point. He said, yeah, okay, cool, no problem. Get a sick note and send it in. So I did. The antibiotics, though, wow. Now, they literally kicked my ass. They stripped me of every single good bit of bacteria I had. And, you know, yes, it killed the bad bacteria, but I still couldn't eat. Now, it took me about, I would say 4 or 5 weeks to get over whatever this was. But in the meantime, I found out that when I went into hospital the first time and they swabbed my nose, I tested positive for COVID. But I didn't have the cough, I didn't have anything else. But I've since found out that COVID can sometimes affect the heart. Now, after I started to being able to eat again, I weighed myself and I'd lost 21 pounds. in a month, like £21 in a month. I looked horrific. It literally just dropped off me with all the sweating and not being able to eat or drink or anything like that. It just dropped off me and I was so weak. Had another test for Helicobacter pylori. The first round of antibiotics hadn't done it. But the other thing that they said was when, I don't know what the other thing was, but it'd gone, but the Helicobacter pylori hadn't. So I was back on antibiotics, this time for a month. Again, antibiotics, they're good because they kill everything, but they kill everything. That's good stuff and bad stuff. And I had another 2 or 3 visits to the hospital with my heart rate, back to A&E again. Poor Amy, she had a book and a blanket in the car. And she would just literally drop me at the doors. Obviously, she's telling me I'm all right, but I didn't feel all right. My heart was telling me I wasn't all right. And so she would just sit in the car park with a blanket and a book, and she would just read it. Now, A&E was starting to get busier now. So your visit from, it was probably like 3 hours. By the time you wait for your bloods done, was starting to increase, and it was getting up to 5 and 6 hours. So I tried to stay away from the hospital as best I can. Every time my heart did this thing, I just basically grimaced through it, and it could sometimes last up to an hour. I would find myself sat in the bath under a hot shower, just like, and willing it to go. So in 2020 into 2021, about a year, I went to A&E, I think it was about 11 times. And the final time I went to A&E in that period, I was driving my van and I felt really bad. I had to pull over. I got out, I took my socks and shoes off because someone said something about grounding. I put my feet on the floor and I couldn't shake whatever this was. And I don't know how I got home, but I got home, and this was from about 20 miles away. I got home and I stumbled through the door, and Amy went, "Oh my God, are you okay?" Like, she was really shocked. I said, "You need to take me to A&E, but do not take me to that hospital A&E. You're going to have to take me to the one further up the road." And she did. She took me there. Now, I'm so glad she did, because when I went in there, they took my bloods, they did my heart stuff and things like that. And then a surgeon who was doing a shift in A&E, once my results came, he pulled me into a side room. He said, "Listen, I've looked at your records, I've seen your visits to the hospital." And he said, "And I totally understand where you're coming from, because I've been through what you went through after a motorbike accident." He said, "I need to try and tell you something here." He said, "When we take your bloods, we're looking for levels of a certain protein that your heart releases when it's under stress. And yours are reading at 9, which is just like someone who's doing exercise. 9 or 10, I think that's what he said, I'm not sure." And then he said, "I need to give you an example. A lady walked in here today with some chest discomfort, and she had her bloods done, and she was having a heart attack, and her readings were like in the thousands." And that kind of like resonated with me, and I kind of like went, "Oh my God, so I'm not having a heart attack. I'm not dying. This is something going on." And he said to me, he said, "I think you've got anxiety." He said, "In fact, I don't think you've got anxiety. I know you've got anxiety." And do you know, the relief, kind of like that, like the release of pressure from him kind of telling me what was wrong, was bizarre. It was weird. It was like a oh moment kind of thing. And what he said is he believed my experience in the ambulance on the first time I went to A&E, and the fact that they weren't talking to me, telling me what was going on or anything like that. He said he thinks I had PTSD from that event, and I had anxiety as a result of that. So for a few months after that, I was all right. When this heart thing was happening, I was all right. It was fine. I just ignored it, let it pass, let it wash over you. And as much as it was uncomfortable, eventually it started to become manageable. So for a few months, like I say, I was fine. And then it happened again. But this time it was coupled with a gripping tightness pushing on my chest. And I thought, this is the one. Back to A&E. Amy took me in there. And by this time you were allowed in, so she came in and sat with us. They took my bloods. They strapped us up to the machines and said, "No, you're fine, you need to go home." you've got health anxiety. So I was like, what the hell's health anxiety? Didn't have a clue what that was. Looked into it. Used to be called hypochondria. That's what it used to be called. But them saying that and telling me that actually made me develop pure blown hypochondria, health anxiety. A few weeks later, I was just jumped out the shower and I had a bit of a coughing fit, and I coughed up quite a bit of, I wouldn't say quite a bit, but there was blood in my sputum or whatever you call it. Amy came and looked at it, goes, well, that's not normal. And she said, ring 111, see what they say. So I rang 111, told them the crack. They said, you need to go to A&E. I was like, oh my God. I hated the place, absolutely hated the place, petrified of the place. So I went to A&E, and I went into like a different department this time. It wasn't the resource part, it was another department. And they took like arterial blood, but he took it wrong. So I ended up with a big bleb on my arm. And he was quite rude, this doctor. Now I understand he was under a lot of stress and a lot of pressure, and COVID was like still kicking around. People were still probably getting poorly off it and stuff like that. But he came in, he said, you need to stop coming to the hospital. There is nothing wrong with you. You need to go home and you need to research health anxiety. And I was taken aback. I was like, oh my God, did he just speak to me like that? Like I couldn't understand. Like I was like, eh. And I was like looking around for kind of like other people to acknowledge the way he spoke to me, but nobody did. So I thought, well, that's how we must speak to everyone. So I came out, came home, and that's what I did. I researched health anxiety. And I knew I had full-blown health anxiety. We used to watch documentaries on the TV about ambulances and stuff like that. I could not watch them. The minute someone said someone had died of a heart attack, I was convinced I was going to have a heart attack. Somebody spoke about the C word. Cancer, I'll say it. I was convinced I had cancer. Even stuff like people had a bad knee. I would have a bad knee. And it became really, really bad. And I ended up starting shrinking into myself. And I became like, instead of a manly man, which I thought I was before 2020, I ended up becoming like a really small boy. And I wouldn't go out the house on my own. I ended up losing my job. I didn't lose it, I left because I couldn't do my job. And they were going to sack me anyway because I was taking more and more time off work with this anxiety. And because I'd used all my sick pay up, I was on statutory sick pay, so I was on really, really bad money as well. So the pressure of all of that was really bad. When Amy went out with the kids or with her family and I was in the house on my own, I'd be literally staring at the clock, waiting for it to come back. And if she was a bit late, I'd be getting ratty and anxious and like upset. And I think what actually got me the most is I was sat on this couch but in the corner. I was wrapped in a blanket and I had a hot water bottle without the cover on pressed directly against my skin. And it was self-harm. But it burnt my belly. It wasn't red hot like you would get a hot water bottle, but it was hot enough to leave a bit of a burn and a big red purpley mark on my stomach. So I was self-harming in a way. Not in the typical sense, but I was using this hot water bottle to kind of like, I would suppose, ground myself. And I was sat in the corner of that couch, and I'm not afraid to admit I was crying. I was really upset. And it was like I was a little boy and I couldn't do nothing for myself. And I just needed help. But the doctors wouldn't help you. They give you antidepressants, give you this, tell you to go to talking changes, which is like a cognitive behavioural therapy thing. But the waiting lists were massive, and and I was getting worse. I was getting really, really bad. 2 seconds, the band's come in. I'll come back to this. Right, he's in from school. Sorry, I don't like talking about it in front of Keegan. He doesn't understand that kind of thing. He's not old enough yet. So where was I? So yeah, the the waiting list for CBT and stuff was massive, and I was getting worse. I couldn't leave the house. Anything I did where my heart rate raised, like, you know, going for a walk or even walking the dog or anything like that, it was seriously affecting me. I was really ill, and it was putting a strain on my relationship as well, because as much as Amy cared for me and, you know, wanted to make sure I was okay, it became really monotonous for her. These trips to A&E, backwards and forwards, and everything's fine and things like that. So yeah, it was really tough. Now during this period, I also lost my sister, my youngest sister. Her name was Billy Jo, and she had her own problems. And that hospital that I had a bad experience in, she had a worse experience in, and it cost her life. And I don't think I've ever dealt with it yet, but kind of, it was weird. It kind of like, it didn't make me worse. It put things into perspective a bit. Like, he was me quivering in the corner of couches and sitting in showers for 3-4 hours at a time, and, you know, listening to freaking whale tunes and cosmic music and trying meditation and stuff like that. And my little sister had passed away with something actually happening, you know, and something actually happened, something real. So I kind of like, we were there when she passed away, me and my other sister, and I came home that day. We knew she was going. She was in intensive care, and we were told a couple of days beforehand that she probably wasn't going to pull through. And God Christ, we got a priest in to give her her last rites, even though we're not religious, and, you know, we just didn't know what to do. It was completely alien to us. My brother, who died a good few years ago, he died like in his flat with his girlfriend, so we didn't have to go through the process of him dying, if you know what I mean. Like, he had his own issues as well, but we had to go through the process of Billy Jo dying, and it was hard. It was really tough. But when she did pass away, I came home, went and sat in my garden, and I drank about, I would say, 15 cans. Smoked about 20 cigarettes. Cried, laughed, listened to music, was up late, was obnoxious to everyone. But when I woke up the next day, it was kind of like an enlightening moment. And I said to myself, I said, no, you need to get a grip of this. There's nothing wrong with you. You've had all the blood tests, and I literally had all the blood tests. You've had heart scans, and I had been for heart scans. You know, you've had every single test that they can give you to see if you're actually having a heart attack or there's a problem with your heart, and you haven't got a problem with your heart. And even though I'd lost 21 pounds when I'd lost all that weight when I had the food poisoning or whatever, and the Helicobacter pylori, I'd put it on and I'd piled on, and I carried on piling it on. I mean, I ate to try and make myself feel better, and I would sit there and eat packets and packets of crisps and pop and chocolate, and just to make me feel better, because it kind of releases endorphins in your head and it kind of suppresses the anxiety. But yeah, I woke up the next day, hungover as shit, feeling really, really sorry for myself. But I thought, no, you need to man up. You're the oldest in the family now. You need to be there for the rest of the family. You need to sort out a funeral. You need to sort out a house. And things like that. So I did, kind of manned up. The anxiety was still there, but I kind of like ignored it. I literally was like, you know, it was like someone tapping you on the shoulder, and I turned around and go, yeah, fuck off, you know. But it was always there niggling away. You know, a funeral came and went, and I felt like I was feeling better, and I started being self-employed and going out and doing more jobs on my own. I could go places on my own. You know, the missus could leave me. And then, yeah, and then we got Pepper. And we'd had Pepper about 6 or 7 months, and I said to my missus, I said, I'm going for a walk. I'm going to get in the van and I'm going to drive to like a big outdoor in the country on my own walk. And my mate said to us, he goes, I'll come with you, mate, to make sure you feel better. And I felt all right. I thought, yeah, in case I fall down a heart attack, he can, you know, give me CPR, bring me back and all that sort of stuff. But the very morning we went to go, he let me down. He didn't mean to, you know, he had stuff on. You know, he's a busy family man, so he just couldn't come. And I wasn't going to go. And I looked at Pepper and I thought, bollocks to this, I'm going. I got in the van and I drove about an hour away from home, and I got out and I went to do this walk, and there was no one there. There was no one around. So if I did have a heart attack, I was going to die, you know. It was one of them things, but I thought not. And I went for this walk and I pushed myself. I didn't just have a bimble, I yomped. And I did, I think I did about 9 miles. Big circular thing, I did 9 miles. And I got back in the van. And I cried. Cried. It's a little bit of sadness. It's a lot of happiness. It was just weird. Like, it was like, oh God, it just fell away from me. And I drove home and I felt really proud of myself, you know. I felt brilliant, and I drove home and I came in and Amy said, oh my God, I haven't seen you smile like that in years. Like, I was like proper like, oh God. And I thought I cracked it. And I did crack it in a way. Because now when I got the anxiety, it didn't bother me as much. My heart didn't beat as fast. Like, I didn't get the crushing sensation anymore. It just became like normal anxiety that everybody has. It wasn't crippling anymore. And it kind of like, it got better and better and better. And the crescendo of it all is, I went to a job, and it was a big 3-story house and the boiler was on the top floor. And I rang the guy because he wasn't answering the door, and he basically answered the phone, and he must have had his AirPods in, and he said, give me 2 minutes, I'm just finishing my exercises. Now, I didn't know who this guy was. Anyway, 2 minutes later, he came to the door, and it was like, he was an Indian guy, but he had long hair, and he had a sports vest on and shorts, and you could tell he was ripped, but he was older. He was probably like close to the 70s, so his hair was long and grey, and he looked a bit hippie. And he took me upstairs to the boiler, and he started talking to me. He said, do you want a cup of tea? I said, oh, no, I don't drink caffeine, because I stopped drinking caffeine because of it would give you a little bit of a palpitation or so I stopped drinking caffeine altogether. He goes, I didn't ask you that. I said, do you want a cup of tea? And I said, oh, I don't drink caffeine. He went, I didn't ask you that. He said, do you want a cup of tea? I went, have you got decaf? He went, yes, I've got decaf tea. And then he went and made me a cup of decaf tea, and he came back up. He said, he said, your approach to things is all wrong. And I was thinking, what the bloody hell is this guy talking about? He said, tell me a bit about yourself. So while I'm doing his servicing his boiler, I just told him everything that I'd been through over the last 4 years, because this is 2024. This was towards the end of 2024. He said, right. I'm going to help you. And I thought, who is this guy? He goes, I'm your guru. So now when I talk about him, I say he's my Indian guru. And he was from India. He was from, I think he was from like a little town out in the sticks, and he moved to the big city and then come over here. He'd end up being, I think he was a doctor, and then he worked at a mental health hospital near us for a long time. He says, I'm going to help you. He said, when you're a child and you're kicking around with your mates and you're going out and you go swimming in the rivers and jumping off the bridges into the rivers and stuff like that, and you play chicken with the cars, because we've all done it, and you know, you get into scrapes and fisticuffs with people, and you know, you chase the girls, and that first kiss before a girl, he said, you're chasing that adrenaline rush, you're chasing that. He said, but when you get an adrenaline rush, your heart goes. And he said, but when you're a kid, you chase that feeling. He said, and you're scared of that feeling. And I was like, oh yeah. Because when I was a kid, we used to go to the river and jump off the bridges into the river. And they were high bridges, you know, and you had to jump in a certain spot or you could end up breaking your neck. And we used to jump off the top diving boards and play chicken with cars. And, you know, we used to get into good scrapes and stuff. There was 2 schools in my town. They used to fight each other all the time. And I did used to chase that feeling, doing garden ops and stuff and knocking on the windows to get a chase and, you know, being cheeky to policemen and getting chases. Nothing bad, just cheekiness. But you wanted that adrenaline, you wanted it. And he said, and you've become frightened of that. He said, but why? He said, you need to start enjoying it again. I was like, oh my God. He said, I was like, you're right. You're absolutely right. I was there for a good hour and a half. I was late to my next 3 or 4 jobs because I was there for so long. Maybe a bit longer, maybe 2 hours. But I came away from there and I felt like I had a bit of a glow. And because he had my number from when I was ringing him, he sent me a couple of like quotes and stuff. I can't remember them off the top of my head. If I remember them, I'll find them on the messages. I'll put them in the description. But I read them, but they, instead of reading them and kind of going, oh yeah, they kind of like soaked in. Like they went into my brain. It was weird. It's like, so I started to think for myself and I started to, you know, I kind of welcomed this feeling that anxiety gave me. I kind of welcomed it, and like my brain kind of started to rewire a bit. And as much as I was in tune with my body before that, and every time my heart raced, I could feel it and hear it and, you know, and be hypersensitive to my heart rate, I became less sensitive to it. So when my heart was beating really fast, I didn't really notice it as much. After doing my jobs and driving home, I got home and I spoke to Mrs. Murphy about it, and I realised that on the way home I drove past an ambulance with its blue lights on. Now that would normally send me into a kind of like panic attack, but it didn't. And over the next couple of weeks, I became, I suppose, desensitized to these things. I managed to watch a documentary about ambulances. I think it was called 999, What's Your Emergency? And I was like, oh my God, I'm fixed. But I wasn't. You know, and stresses and pressure of life make you drop your guard a little bit. So I was still having the odd occasional anxiety attack. And I think I'm going to get them for the rest of my life. But now I won't be running to A&E. I'll be letting the feeling wash over me and, you know, and dealing with it. So for me, the way I dealt with anxiety, when I look back on it now, is number one, identity tests and everything like that. And this is what I'm saying you guys should do if you've got anxiety. Identify what it is. Make sure you get all the tests to make sure there's nothing sinister going on. And identify you've got anxiety or health anxiety. The second one was acceptance. Accept you've got anxiety. Understand it is a normal thing. It's like every human goes through it at some point in their life. And you need to accept that it's happening to you and that it's not going to kill you. Number 3, is allow yourself to have anxiety. So allow yourself to have it. Let the feeling wash over you. Remind yourself that you're not going to die, and you're not going to pop your clogs, and you're not going to leave your family with no one earning the money and all that sort of stuff. You're literally having an anxiety attack, which is a completely normal thing. George Washington used to have them. Winston Churchill, I believe, used to have them. You know, there's plenty of big, really important, powerful people in history who used to have them. And they were okay. They didn't die from it. It can't kill you. And then number 4 was heal from having anxiety. Heal yourself. Realize that it isn't the be all and end all, and it's not what defines you as a person. You can have the bad times. You can have the parts where you're quivering and you're crying and upset in the corner. But you need to realise that them times are going to pass. And it's took me probably maybe a year from meeting my Indian guru to going through all them stages to getting to the point where I am now, where I'm prepared to go out and exercise and actually identify other things that are going wrong in my life, like the weight, like the health issues with psoriasis and stuff like that, and realise that the doctors aren't always the answer. Sometimes you've got to look deep within yourself and realise that you are the key to fixing yourself. Without sounding like a prophet, that is the truth. And you can fix yourself. And I believe at the moment, I have fixed myself. So guys, that's my video on anxiety and why I'm like I am now and where I've been on my little journey since 2020. I hope you can kind of like relate to some things I've said. And if you have any comments or suggestions, or, you know, if you've been going through stuff as well, drop me a comment. I will reply to everybody. I have replied to everybody so far, and I will reply to you guys. This is important. Every person goes through this, and I believe most people do go through it about midlife as well. And it's normally triggered by something. It's triggered by, you know, a traumatic event, a death, losing someone close to you can trigger it. Maybe a health scare or a health issue, that can trigger it as well. But modern science and modern medicine is a wonderful thing, and it can fix a lot, you know. There's not a lot they can't fix nowadays. And I think sometimes you don't realise, that you can be fixed if you've got something wrong with you. And most of the time, you don't actually have anything wrong with you. It's your head feeding your heart, feeding the rest of your body. So if you've watched this whole video, like I say, I appreciate your time. Drop me a comment. If you like the content, give us a follow. And if you feel like any of your friends or family members or people that follow you or people you speak to online can, you know, benefit from what I've spoke about today, please give me a share. Thank you very much.